We're now ready for the next presentation, and it's our privilege to welcome up Lee-Ann Garnett. Lee-Ann is the Deputy Director of Planning for the City of Burnaby. She's somebody who's been a big advocate for community input and community engagement in the time that we've worked with Burnaby, and is going to be taking some time to share with us a little bit more about what are the different policy areas that we're really looking at with the Assembly. What are some of the areas that the city's curious to learn from you? And what does it feel like to be in the shoes of a decision maker and the types of trade-offs that City Hall needs to work with every day? So with that, Lee-Ann, please.
Thank you, Robin. Hello, everyone. Great to be here today. As Robin said, I'm Lee-Ann, and I'm the Deputy GM of the Planning and Development Department. I was reflecting this morning. I've been doing planning for a long time, 25 years, which is, it's a career, and about 10 years of those in Burnaby. And it's a pretty exciting time to be a planner because there's a lot of changes happening in our city, but also provincially. And just a lot of interest in housing and climate and how we're responding. And I heard a CBC story that said, we need planners more now than ever, which like warms my heart because, you know, a lot of times you do this work and it's just under the radar. And so you guys are being planners with us too through this journey. Now Robin kind of gave an intro, and this says that I'm going to talk about how Burnaby will grow to 2050, but I'm also going to do a little bit of a talk about how we do planning and the things that we're going to be considering through this assembly process before I kind of launch into the themes. And as urban planners, you know, we really make policies that guide the actions of the city. And when it comes down to that long-range thinking, we're really figuring out how we're going to use the scarce resources that we have, right? And when it comes to a city, our resources are our land base. So if it's private land, the city's role is to say what kinds of things can happen on that land and how much activity can happen on it. If it's public land, we make decisions on what we're going to save for, say, park and recreation, sport field type uses, or what we're going to save for environmental uses. And if it's, and the other resource that we have are roads, right? So where we drive or walk or bike. The other kind of resource that we manage is really money and how we pay for it all. So that's sort of the context in which we're going to be going through these theme areas. So when it comes to planning then, what planners' jobs really are, what we do is there's three kind of main inputs. And the first one is a technical one. So our job is to look at, someone asked about projections. So think about the population and job growth that's going to happen. We need data for this, we do research, and we do mapping. So there's, first of all, technical. Second of all, there's political inputs that happen. So the city has been going on for 100 years. They've made a lot of decisions. They have policies in place. They have budgets in place. And so we have to think about that as we're making the policy recommendations that we make. The third one is people. We want to hear what people have to say, and we do this through engagement. And Erin went through and talked to you about the types of techniques that we've used so far. So we've got these sort of three main balls that we are juggling as we do a plan. We put them in this filter. It seems very scientific, this beaker thing. But I like to think about it more as almost like we put them in the pot and we're cooking a fine dish or a fine stew. We mix it all up and we're blending it until we get something that feels right for us. And, oh, sorry, where did my beaker go? There it is. And then out of that, we have recommendations that we're going to put forward. So when doing this work, there's a lot of things that we have to consider. And there's a number of bullets on the slide, but three kind of main themes that we think about along doing this policy work. First is, in our OCP, we consciously said we want to advance the theme of equity, diversity, and inclusion, and make sure that we when we're engaging people, we're mindful of this, and also when we write the policies, they reflect the diversity that is Burnaby. Second of all, resiliency is a theme, and you'll see bullets up here that talk about environment and climate and economic. And so that's another main theme of which we look at all the work that we're going to do. And the third one, importantly, is the relations that we have with First Nations in Burnaby, with the host nations, but also for people who are indigenous who live in Burnaby. And how can we create a plan that's going to not meet everything that the Truth and Reconciliation actions are for us, but at least advance it the best that we can at this time. And underlying all of that is the question of governance. And you started to delve into that question. This is what's the city's role versus what's the province's role, what's the Fed's role, right? We're also sitting here in the middle of Metro Vancouver. And so what the policies that we make can impact what happens regionally, but also our neighbors. Vancouver, Surrey, Coquitlam, we share boundaries. We have people going back and forth and through every day, and we have all these connections physically, right? Like trails and roads and bikes. So, those are some of the inputs and things we think about. We come up with a number of scenarios or policies that we want to talk about, and we really have to do a deeper analysis. This is the analysis part of the policy analysis. I want you to think about, for yourself, when you're thinking about your own life and you have to make a decision or decide what to do with what you have, you yourself think through all the trade-offs, right? So say you're thinking about, hey, I've got a little bit of extra money. What should I do with that? Should I, give some money to my kids, or should I donate to a charity, or should I fix up my backyard, or should I do this? So you always are trading off these different things, and you're thinking about the pluses and minuses of each of those actions, right? And that's what we want to do with our city recommendations. Because we don't have an endless bucket of money, unfortunately, and we don't have endless amounts of land to do everything that we want. So we're going to have to make some choices and put forward recommendations. We might say yes to things, but that means we're saying no to other things. We say no to some things that might mean that we're making opportunities for good things that we want. But when we make these trade-offs, we've got to do a couple of things well. First is really think, what are the objectives we're trying to achieve here, and have criteria by which we're going to measure them, and we'll talk a bit about that, and really be transparent about what we're thinking of. So, this process isn't about going, yeah, I think more development in Royal Oak is a good idea. We're going to think through what that might mean, right? And talk about the pros and cons of that. And if we do that well, then we're going to end up having a better plan. So there are 5 themes that you're going to work through for the next series of meetings. The first is growth, density, and land use. This is the basic, most kind of relevant, or how can I say it, the foundational part of an OCP. And we have a whole bunch of objectives, but I don't want you to fall asleep after lunch. So we're only going to kind of give you a smattering of some of the key ones. So for the city, for growth, density, and land use, it's really important that infrastructure and services are updated and enhanced. I mean, if we don't have toilets that flush, taps with running water, power, all those kinds of electricity and so on, then we aren't doing a good job. So we have to make sure that those fundamental things are in place as we grow. We want our transportation and our land use to be aligned so that we can do the good things of providing people with transportation options, and also with providing homes close to transportation. And we want compact, connected, and complete communities, so you don't have to be driving to downtown Vancouver for all your cultural needs or so on. So what kinds of trade-offs and things will you be discussing? So here's some examples. we're gonna ask you questions such as, grow up or grow out? What would be better? Would we wanna have more towers and higher building forms in our town centers? Or do we want our density to be sort of spread out along our trail roads and in other neighborhoods? Here's another kind of trade-off question. If we are in a housing crunch and crisis, which many people say we are, do we take lands that we've carefully set aside for a long time and turn them over to housing? So think about areas like Production and Lake City SkyTrain stations. Those are employment areas. Should they have more housing? We're going to ask you about that, and you're going to have a think about it, and we'll work through that. Our second theme is about livability, well-being, and belonging, because we can't just add all of these people and all these jobs and not have great communities. Who would want to live and work here if we didn't think about this in building our OCP? So we want to, for objectives, achieve thinking about quality of life for everyone who lives, works, and plays here. We want to foster a sense of belonging and consider safety. And that was a theme I heard earlier before lunch. That was pretty cool that came out already. Accessibility and quality of our services, amenities, and spaces. And also we want to make sure, or have at least a discussion of whether we're keeping pace with providing these kinds of amenities and services as we grow. So the types of trade-off discussions are things like, do you think it's more important that we expand city services, or is it important to also keep taxes low? What's the right balance? And also, if we've only got so much money in the piggy bank, are there some areas, do we have to make some hard choices? Is there some area in the city that needs a library, for example, or a pool, or some sort of facility more than another, right? So that's the kind of trade-off in this second theme. Thirdly, climate change. So our objective here is to have an OCP where we're improving our resilience to natural hazards and climate emergency situations. We talked, I saw in your worksheet, it referred to things like heat waves, flooding, and so on, and we've seen those kinds of things in Burnaby. We want to address and mitigate natural hazards and enhance our emergency response. And third is work towards reducing GHGs and meeting the targets. We do have targets now. What actions are we going to take to get there? So if you want to change behavior when it comes to, say, GHG targets, one way to look at it is, do you use a carrot approach or a stick approach? So if I thought about the question of green buildings or buildings, they are a cause of Burnaby's GHG emissions. A carrot approach would say, well, we want developers to build more green buildings and we'll give them more density or square footage in exchange for them having more features, green building features. Do we do that, or do we have the stick, where we just make the rule and say you're going to provide these? And there's pros and cons, as you can imagine, to both those approaches. And if you think about resiliency, climate, and so on from a regional perspective, if you think about Burnaby and how lucky we are in a way to have so much transit, and we're rich in SkyTrain service and so on, we have a lot of other great things about living here. Is it a responsible thing to do to try to accommodate even more than our percentage of growth? Right now, from a regional perspective, we take about 10% of the region's overall growth. That's what Burnaby historically takes. Should it be more? Questions to ponder. Housing is, along with transportation, are the other two fundamental topics of an OCP. And we've done a lot of work in Burnaby, and it culminated in that last bullet called a home strategy, where our vision is that Burnaby is a place where everyone can find a home, afford a home, and feel at home. And so we want to embody those goals in the OCP, where we want to make sure that we're planning for a range of housing types, sizes, and affordability levels, and also tenure. So planning for renting and owning. We want to protect renters and also add to the rental supply. And we want to make sure that we build housing that helps create neighborhood identity and makes neighborhoods great and livable places. We could talk about trade-offs for housing for hours, and I know you will over the coming weeks, but simply said, one of the key examples of this trade-off is, do we build housing that's livable, or do we focus on affordability? Because those are two things that that aren't always aligned. You might have to give up one thing to get the other. Finally, transportation. There we are. So our objective here is to do more shifting from driving to being able to take sustainable modes. That's in our transportation plan, which is, about 2 years old. So it's a pretty up-to-date plan. We want to improve infrastructure that supports people taking transit and walking, cycling and rolling. Of course, part of the puzzle is EVs and electric vehicles, personal ones, but also for public transport, and reducing GHGs. Safety is also an important thing when you think about transportation. So trade-offs are things like, should we advocate for more SkyTrain stations, or should we be trying to have more bus service, which is cheaper to provide, but as you know, there's a trade-off of it's not as fast as a SkyTrain. Should we be reducing lanes for cars to allow buses to go faster or have more road space for other modes of transportation? So those are all really big questions. I've probably just unloaded too much information at one time, but those are just supposed to be examples of what you're going to be thinking through. I also gave you kind of my broad brush of what we do for policy making. And I hope I've energized you a bit for the work that lies ahead. I'm really thinking of you as citizen planners in a way. And I want to really, first of all, take this moment to thank you, because doing something for 7 weeks in a row, 7 sessions in a row, talking about policy is hard work. But I hope in 25 years, we'll all come back and we'll go, wow, we did some really good planning, and we did the right thing for the city of Burnaby. So with that, back to you, Robin.
Okay, we have some time for questions for Lee-Ann. I've got a question over here.
Thank you. Jess. My question is, can you give me an example of a decision or a policy that resulted in housing that was affordable but not livable?
Affordable but not livable. Well, some would say sometimes in housing design we require more features. We might say that we want to have more amenity space, more landscaping, better design, and those improve affordability, right? Those improve livability. But those cost money, and those cost the end purchaser money to sometimes have extra features like that. So what's the balance of that, is the question. I hope that helps.
Yes.
Other questions, and we'll prioritize people who haven't had a chance to ask a question today as we begin.
Hi, my name is Gloria, and I'm a mortgage broker, so I deal with a lot of housing stuff. And there was a project in Port Moody that I absolutely loved, and I haven't seen it since. And the company communicated with the city and communicated with CMHC, and it was brand new condos. They were priced at an affordable price. but the only people that were allowed to buy them had to live in them, had to have certain income requirements. So people, the richy riches, couldn't go in and buy all the condos. They were for the people that needed them. And the people that bought these homes were so grateful because they weren't competing. Is that something that the city of Burnaby can do in conjunction with CMHC and developers to get the people that need the homes in the homes and not all these other people going in and going, I'll pick that one, that one, that one, that one, because I've got a gold ticket to be the first one at the show.
Yeah, that's a great point. So all of you here, I know you're keen city watchers, we've been focusing on rental a lot. And we've been doing that for about 5 years, and we now know we've got to start to turn our attention to affordable ownership. So I like that you brought that forward. I don't know if you watched the news, but last week the province announced a program called BC Builds, which is supposed to be a home ownership type of program. And it's city land, provincial money, and working with a nonprofit to do affordable home ownership. So we don't have that in place, but I think we're going to be seeing that soon.
Additional questions?
Hi again, my name is Paul Kwan. The question about the 10% taking on the responsibilities of other regional growth, what does that mean? Like, we're 10%, but how do we take on the responsibilities of other regional growth?
Sure, let me take a little bit more time to explain that in a better way. So right now, each year, Metro Vancouver, say we get 35,000 people. Burnaby typically every year gets about 3,500, so 10% of that growth, right? Surrey gets more, Vancouver grows more, and places like Port Moody are smaller. So the question would be, we're a city with great infrastructure, right? We have a lot of transit, we have a lot of jobs, we have the ability to build more housing. Should we be accommodating even more growth from a regional perspective so that growth isn't happening farther out in the valley on greenfield sites and so on? From a climate thing, is that a good thing to do? That was sort of the trade-off question I was trying to frame. I hope that helps.
Other questions? Okay, you have one over here.
Thank you for the presentation. My question is about climate changes. Our global warming we have in our neighbors or in our cities. What is the strategy of the city for sure? You know, year after the year we are going to be shortage of the water, and drought years they are coming. What is the strategy of city to water conservation for drought year or summers or wildfire in future?
Well, I think that's a really important question, and I'll just be upfront. I think that our city has some good emergency management in place if we have a heat wave, if we have very good fire service and so on. I think what we need to do for this plan is to understand better the hazards that we have and do more planning around that and become more resilient. I talked about how one of our inputs is doing research on topic areas. We've done lots of research in policy on housing, lots on transportation, and I'll just put it out there that we feel that this is an area where we've got to do some more work and bring forward those answers to the community to discuss more. So that is something for us to still work on.
Time for a couple more questions. So again, trying to prioritize folks who haven't had a chance to ask a question yet today.
Hi everyone, my name is Charlie. I assume that this is going to be provided, but I just want to be a little bit clearer about this. In making some of these trade-offs, I think it'll be very useful to have a little more data on understanding what the actual trade-offs mean. So for example, when you suggest, do we make more priorities towards housing or businesses or whatnot, both as one narrow microcosm affects it, like the tax base of what we have access to make other decisions on other things that we do. Are these kinds of is this information going to be provided through us through this session, or how much will it be provided? Is there other things that we can do to, understand a little bit more about the trade-offs that we will be making?
And maybe, Lee-Ann, I'll take that question, at least to start with, unless there's anything you want to add. So we have 7 Saturdays together, and the desire is that every new week, we're going to be providing new learning materials to you, just as we did before this session. As we go further, you're also going to be helping to make choices about which topics you want to dive into the deepest. And then we'll give you extra information about those topics. So by the time we get to the end of the 7 sessions, you'll have had the information you need to work through the trade-offs. You can also, as we go, ask us questions, and we'll get you more information based on what you feel like you're missing. So yes, incrementally, we're trying to avoid an information dump, and already I think there's been a lot of information today, and we're just scratching the surface. So we're just trying to go one piece at a time. Does that answer? Yeah, anything you want to share about the information that the city is available?
No, that's great.
Okay. Okay, is there another?
Can you indulge me? Can I just provide the members here one more piece of info?
Please do.
So I heard when Aaron was presenting some questions about what does this plan really mean, right? And Aaron provided you a response, and I gave a little bit more. And this plan, I really think people need to know that this plan guides what happens on every piece of land. So there's a map with every parcel, and it says what you can do and how much development. And that is a very, very powerful thing. And so the decisions we make about what goes where and what that map says really is one of the linchpins of it. And the way that we can achieve all these goals that we talk about is having the land use framework that represents these objectives.
Okay,
So it's important.
thank you so much, Lee-Ann. Let's give a round of
Thanks,
applause
everyone.
for Lee-Ann.